New week, new series here in Denver as the red hot Diamondbacks make their way to Coors Field. But as we just saw from the Cubs series, anything at Coors Field can be chaos. Can the Rockies play upset against the Diamondbacks? We've got our buddy Derek Montilla on the podcast to preview the series. That's coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. You are tuned into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Bet365. Use code DNVR365 when you sign up. Choose your offer and find out why it is never ordinary with Bet365. What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. It is a beautiful Monday in Denver because we've got an incredible series on our hands here for the Rockies. The Rockies taking on the red-hot Arizona Diamondbacks as they come into town. And we've got meaningful baseball taking place in Coors Field. So whenever we have meaningful baseball, we've got to have a good guest on the show, and we've got an incredible guest joining us today. Derek Montilla, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for hopping on. Hopefully we get some good baseball this week at Coors Field.
Very tight race here that they're involved in for the wild card spot. So you are not wrong. This series, just like pretty much every series the Diamondbacks are going to play between now and the end of the season, is kind of a playoff series.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And look, man, like you guys are coming off of a wild series at Milwaukee. With Milwaukee, you had a crazy kind of, I don't know if it was a comeback of some sorts. It was a comeback from Milwaukee as you guys were up 5. But you ended up being able to take the win, avoid the sweep. It feels like there's like all of this energy and momentum, but this last few weeks for the Diamondbacks have been just kind of weird. I mean, what's the vibe heading into Denver for you guys right now? I mean, how are things feeling as you're getting ready to wrap up the season?
Concern, worry. That's the vibe right now, at least with the fans, right? That this Diamondbacks team is very, very close, and it feels like they do have to win every single game with the way that the Padres, the Mets, and the Braves are playing lately. I think that the Diamondbacks have had a lot of injuries. They've experienced a lot of guys missing out of both their starting rotation and their starting lineup. They just lost Ryan Nelson, who has arguably been their best pitcher over the last 2 months, to the 15-day IL with shoulder inflammation. So that's a little bit of an issue. Obviously, if you've been following this team, you may know that Jordan Montgomery has been a bit of a disappointment. They moved him out of the starting rotation into the bullpen, but with the Nelson's injury, he will be moving back into the starting rotation. It's going to be interesting. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts right now for this team, and I think that's the problem, is that baseball is a game of consistency. It's a game of, kind of getting into a groove and staying there. This team was absolutely in a groove, and that's when they were missing some of their best players. When Ketel Marte and Christian Walker went down with injuries, the Diamondbacks just found some guys that were able to step up and really perform well in their absence. You got to give credit to guys like Kevin Newman. They went out and they picked up Josh Bell at the trade deadline. Yeah. And so somehow all of these replacements for some of this team's biggest stars played in the same way that those guys were playing. It's like this team didn't miss a beat. But then oddly enough, when you get those guys back from injury, now those guys for a little bit were the ones that were struggling, because of course baseball is just a fickle game like that. When you return from any kind of layoff, it's hard to come back and play at the exact same level that you were playing at. So now Ketel has been contributing, Christian Walker has been contributing, everything's been going well, but they've, they get another injury here in Ryan Nelson. They also got back Gabby Moreno yesterday, which is their starting catcher and somebody that was a big piece of this team that's been missing due to injury. So they have a short amount of time here to get these guys all kind of back up to speed as far as, getting them playing time and getting them back to being essentially their normal selves during the regular season. And that's why this series is so important. Obviously, going to Colorado, you know that the offense is probably going to, pick up. And that's kind of a good thing right now for this team, just to give them, some confidence and to have some good days at the plate. I just also know that this Rockies team has throughout the season has consistently beat teams that your record would suggest you have no business beating otherwise, right? Like this
Somehow.
Rockies team, you look up at the scoreboard and it feels like there's always a game where the Rockies are beating some team that you're like, oh wow, Rockies beat the Dodgers. Oh wow,
Yeah.
look at that. They're beating the Yankees, like things like that. It just feels like, this team is a dangerous team. It's just obviously they haven't had the best season. That's why this series is concerning. Going to Colorado, playing a Rockies team that can kind of beat anybody on any given night. It feels like with how crucial these games are does cause you a bit of concern as a Diamondbacks fan.
Well, I'll validate that concern here for a moment. I had Cody Del Mendo, the CHGO Cubs beat writer on the pod on Friday before this Cubs series.
I love Cody very much.
Yeah. So and his the way he described it, and I'll put this into context. This was before the series started. The way he described playing at Coors Field is chaos. And he couldn't have summed it up better, because what followed from that was a Hunter Goodman, kind of a rookie catcher, having a 7 RBI, 2 home run, one of them being grand slam game to win the game, their first game against the Cubs in that series. Then you have Sam Hilliard, coming back, hitting a home run as a pinch hitter to win the game. In huge fashion in their second game. And then you were going into the 9th inning yesterday, potentially in line to get the sweep against the Cubs, for the Rockies at least, down by only 2 runs. Your bullpen kind of blew it. Justin Lawrence fell apart there in the 9th inning, gave up 6 runs. But, going into the 9th inning yesterday, it was like there was a high possibility or a chance that the Rockies, through the sense of chaos that they have playing at Coors Field, could have swept a pretty good Cubs team. I mean, the Cubs team that wants to be better, but still a good Cubs team nonetheless. And you said it. I mean, this is a Rockies team that's gone toe-to-toe with the Padres when the Padres were in the peak of their run coming out of that All-Star break. And I just think you never know what you're going to expect. And I would also say, too, this is a different Rockies team than the team that you faced like a month ago or whenever the last time the Diamondbacks played the Rockies, because we've got so many young guys. We in the media don't even really know what we're going to expect. We're having to actually check the lineup every single game, because it's like, all right, who's going to be our starting catcher tonight? Who's pinch hitting for us tonight? Who's, playing in left field? Like, we have no idea what the lineup's going to look like every single night. And in a way, I think that's actually helped the Rockies in the latter half of this season, because it's given that kind of variable, that X factor against teams like the Diamondbacks, like the Dodgers, like the Padres, those good teams where you just don't really know how to scout these guys, and so they can kind of sneak out a win here or there. I think it's going to be a weird series, man. I just have no idea what to expect coming into these games.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I don't know what to expect. In fact, we don't really have probable pitchers outside of today's game. I know Merrill Kelly is starting for the Diamondbacks, but I don't know what the order is going to look like going forward with the loss of Brian Nelson. I don't know where Jordan Montgomery is going to factor in, or if he's going to pitch. I mean, I imagine he has to pitch in this series, but he might not. I don't know what to expect out of this offense. The Diamondbacks came in to the series with the Brewers as the best offense in baseball. Yeah. And then they proceeded to lose in a 2-1 game against the Brewers in game 1 of this series. They got absolutely smoked in game 2 and lost 15-8. And then last night was the weirdest game of the season. Yeah. And I mean, you talk about chaos. Like that was a big part of the Diamondbacks game last year, right? Was embracing chaos, the chaos that they caused on the base path, their ability to just make the opposition make mistakes due to the fact that you had guys like Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, Alec Thomas, all that just had speed on the base path that would, again, take those extra bases. And we saw that a bit last night. Like Corbin Carroll scored a critical run on a wild pitch by, getting from first all the way to third. And there's just not a lot of guys in Major League Baseball that are going to be able to do that in the way that Corbin Carroll can. So last night was just, like you said, it was they were up 5-0. It was a comeback by the Brewers. And then, of course, the Diamondbacks managed to just find a way to stay in it and win. That game was huge, though, especially coming into this series. I mean, they really needed just something positive to build on, considering, how close this wild card race is right now.
Yeah, well, and you said it. I mean, it's like these are must-win games at this point, and especially against teams like the Brewers, and they're very good teams. But and then almost getting swept. Like you said, you start to kind of start to kind of worry a little bit because,
Yeah.
you look at the remaining games on your schedule too, and we'll talk about this later in the show, but you've got the Rockies on your schedule, but you've got some tough teams coming up here. But I want to go back to kind of some of those unknowns because today in our game today, you're going to see a starting pitcher in Antonio Senzatella, who's making his season debut this year for the Rockies. He's a pitcher that's pitched here for, I think it's like 7 years for the Rockies. Spent his whole career in Colorado. Right. Had Tommy John surgery in July of last year. This will be his first start that he's making today. So it's another one of those things where it's like, I have no idea what you're going to get. I mean, I would argue that no one really knows what you're going to get out of Senzatella. I talked to him yesterday, and he said he feels good. He's been working on his off-speed pitches a lot in coming back, in rehabbing at Albuquerque and Hartford. But, anytime you get a guy who had Tommy John surgery and they're coming back to pitch for the first time, especially at Coors Field, you just don't know what you're going to get. We saw yesterday Cal Quantrill came off the IL, threw 6 walks in 3 innings and got pulled. And it's like you just don't know what you're going to get. And then there's also that opportunity where like Senzatella's been throwing really well at the minors, so he might come up and have a really good game. We just don't know. The other thing to look at, though, is the Rockies bullpen has been, outside of a couple bad innings by 1 or 2 pitchers, the Rockies bullpen has been incredible in these last 2 weeks. They're an under 2 ERA as a unit in, I think it's almost 2.5 weeks of games, under 2 ERA. I mean, they've been lights out. This is a team that I think is finding some confidence and is finding a way to keep their team in ball games. And so I do think this is going to be a little bit harder. And I mean, I'm saying this now, who knows what we're going to get, but they've been making games interesting, really for almost this entire, 3-week stretch that they've had. They've been making it interesting. So I think, for the Diamondbacks, obviously this is a must-win situation because it's the Rockies from a win and loss standpoint. But I do think the Rockies are gonna put their best foot forward and at least make it interesting against you guys.
Why are you guys doing that? Why are we doing that? Why are we putting up a fight?
I know, right?
Can't we just start planning our off-season plans? I'll help you guys book a good vacation. We don't have to do this because you're right. Like, that is exactly it. The Diamondbacks have really struggled when it comes to kind of the unknown. And when you look this season at guys they have faced before or guys there's plenty of tape on, they absolutely wrecked Justin Verlander in a game against the Houston Astros. Like, if the Diamondbacks can put together a game plan, they seem to do a good job of it, even against some of the best pitchers in baseball. However, when they don't know, like what you're saying, the unknown about a team like this, when they go up against a bullpen game, when they go up against a young player, like the mistakes they made against Jackson Chourio in this series with the Brewers, like, I don't know why you would ever test Chourio with the way that he hit against you in games 1 and game 2. But for some reason, they decided, to walk a different player in order to get to him in yesterday's game, and he made them pay for it late. And again, there's situations like that where it seems like the rest of us in baseball know not to mess with that man, but the Diamondbacks decided to test him. And, again, with it being a lot of young players in Colorado, I could see the Diamondbacks, doing that, maybe going after guys and perhaps making some mistakes. Like you said, the Diamondbacks are going through a similar thing when it comes to players returning from injury. I covered the position players, but Eduardo Rodriguez and Merrill Kelly missed the majority of the season. And those guys, they have shown absolute, glimpses of how good they can be since returning, but it's consistency, right? Like Merrill Kelly, I think, has had one really good start. And outside of that, there's always just either been some issues with his longevity or with just kind of things kind of falling off. But it's baseball, right? You got to build back up. You got to get back up to that point. At least they're back now in order to try to build back up before the end of the season. We just don't know, again, what you're going to get out of somebody who, in Merrill Kelly's case, was so consistent last year, and I mean, he was arguably the ace of the staff. So if he can be himself, then you feel fairly confident about tonight's game as a Diamondbacks fan. But again, there's still that unknown about how good these guys, even the best guys in the starting rotation, are going to be after, this long layoff and, as they're still getting kind of back up to speed.
Yeah, well, and I'll give you a scouting report, a little bit, some insight into kind of where the Rockies are at least recently. The Rockies bullpen has been an issue for them for years now. I mean, I would say that the majority of the Rockies' failures over the years have come through their bullpen and their pitching staff. But for the first time,
it's where the Diamondbacks and the Rockies shake hands on that one. It's like purple. Yes. And bad bullpens, that's us there, right there in the middle.
It's so frustrating. And I'm a former pitcher, so like it's infuriating to me when and not to throw him completely under the bus, but like Justin Lawrence, it was a 2-run game going into the 8th inning or 9th inning yesterday against the Cubs, where you have a chance to sweep it. Give your team a chance to show up in the bottom of the 8th and the bottom of the 9th inning with a 2-run deficit and at least have a chance. And you give up 6 runs in the late innings, and you're just like, what are we doing? So I get it, man. But I got to give credit. Outside of a couple bad innings, this Rockies bullpen has been incredible, and it has been on the backs of some of our really young pitchers. And the Rockies bullpen has had the highest average fastball speed in all of baseball for the month of September. They're averaging like 97 miles an hour on their fastball. They've got about 4 guys that can average between 97 to 101 in the bullpen. I actually said it yesterday in the press box. I'm like, our bullpen is just a bunch of closers right now. Like, we've got a bunch of 20-year-old closers that are like inexperienced, but because they haven't been up at the big leagues, we haven't seen them a bunch. I think they're able to blow it by some guys, recently at least. And so they're going to be kind of that X factor that, because the Diamondbacks haven't faced a Luis Peralta and a Jeff Criswell and a Jaden Hill, Seth Halverson, these are guys that have come up within the last 2 weeks and been really promising. So that's going to be an X factor that I'm interested to see. And then the other side of this, and I think this is on the flip side of this, is the Rockies' inability to score with runners in score, to score kind of in a small ball sense with runners in scoring position has been killer for them. I mean, they'll get a guy at second base with nobody out, and nothing happens to that guy, And so I think if the Rockies are going to focus on playing small ball a little bit more offensively, from what I was talking to Bud Black yesterday, I think that's kind of their focus going into this series. And I think they're going to lean on that bullpen a little bit harder if, a guy like Senzatella in his first start back at the big league level in a year, if he's not showing, the success and the strength that they want to see out of him, I think they're going to go to the bullpen pretty early and see if they can get some innings out of them. So that's kind of my scouting report. But before we continue on, got to give a shout out to our friends over at UC Health real quick, because at UC Health, they want to help you live your healthiest lives with the Ready, Set, Co initiative. And basically what this is it's just finding small ways to make Coloradans healthier. Colorado is the second healthiest state in the country, which is shocking to me because we got a lot of healthy people out here in Colorado. People are out there with their coffee in the morning, getting their morning sunlight, getting their walks in, their early morning jogs in. I was on TDSP the other day, and Harrison was realizing that both Mitch and I are both 5 a.m. early risers, get to the gym first thing in the morning. That's kind of our routine. So we've got a healthy mindset already, but RSC and UC Health are trying to get you to that next level of healthiest. And it's all about just like making some slight adjustments. Like I said, maybe getting up a little earlier, getting your early morning walk in, getting some good nutrition in the morning, whatever that looks like. UC Health wants to help you live your healthiest life. So if you want to join UC Health's Ready, Set, Co challenge, click the link in the show notes of this podcast or go to uchealth.org/readysetco and find out how you can get involved. Also got to share some love with our friends over at Toyota, because Toyota is the official vehicle of the Rockies and of DNVR. And look, I cannot say enough about Toyota because I've been a lifelong Toyota owner. My first car was a 1997 Toyota Camry. I now have a 2007 Toyota Highlander, and my next car that I'm probably going to be getting here pretty soon is going to be probably in the RAV4 Toyota Tacoma range. But I got to stay within that Toyota because they are just truly the best vehicle on the market. They are affordable. They are efficient. They're reliable. I mean, my 2007 Toyota Highlander, I put that thing through hell every single year, taking it up into the mountains, going fishing with it. Going on long road trips. We took it to Seattle last year from Colorado. Like it's got 250,000 miles on it. Maybe it's not making a Seattle road trip anymore, but I'm going up to Gunnison this weekend, and it's a 4-hour drive, so 8 hours round trip going out into the mountains. And I fully trust that it is going to get me there and back, no matter how many miles are on it. I take good care of it. It takes good care of me. So whatever your interest is, whether it's off-roading, going on road trips, just a reliable car, whatever you're looking for, Toyota's got you covered. Visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. Auto Nation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood, and the official and Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. All right, Derek, I want to ask your thoughts, because I was just kind of giving you a rundown of some of the adjustments that I think the Rockies need to make, going into this series, playing a little more small ball, scoring those runners from second base when they're in scoring position. But I want to ask you, for the Diamondbacks, what are some of the adjustments you think the team needs to make here? It's getting to that latter half of the season. This is crucial baseball here. You got to clean some things up. What are the things that they've been struggling with recently, and what do they need to fix going into these last few series?
I'd like to see the starting rotation give them some more length. I think the bullpen has been really overworked. Yesterday's game, you had a guy in Kevin Ginkel that you can normally trust that gave up 4 earned runs and allowed that, game to turn around and go, from the Diamondbacks leading to being behind in that one. There's definitely some things in regards to the bullpen. I mean, the Diamondbacks have swapped some guys out. They lost Paul Sewald now to the IL. They're going to lose Jordan Montgomery from the bullpen, who they had put in there as kind of a long reliever. It's worked out. I mean, in some blowout losses or even some close games, Jordan Montgomery has been able to go out there, give them 3 to 4 innings out of the pen, and just save some arms, give these guys a chance to rest. You have some very, very valuable bullpen arms, of course, but it's, figuring out who you're going to trust, who you're going to go with in the postseason, if the Diamondbacks can make it there, or at least, here down the stretch. But I think, going back to what you said, there is something about this team that has changed from last year to this year. And, obviously it's much better to be able to, hit for power and have, as many home runs as the Diamondbacks have had, and be able to get get offense in the manner that they have. But it feels a little bit like they've abandoned that small ball that you're talking about. And I think it's not a matter of going all in one way or another. It's just a matter of situational baseball. There were times in this series against the Brewers, especially their very, very good bullpen, that they had a chance to maybe make some moves to just try to eke those 1 runs across here and there. And especially in game 1, that would have made the difference. Right. So there is, and it happened. Like I said, Corbin Carroll made a tremendous heads up play to make it from first to third, ended up tying the score, or scoring the tying run in yesterday's game, and making a huge deal or huge impact just by, literally taking that extra base. So this right now is a team that needs to kind of play it based on, how the game is going, and not rely so much on the home run ball that has been there at times. I mean, look at Gino Suarez and everything that he's done for this team. He's tied for 14th in Major League Baseball in RBI, which is incredible considering this guy was just absolutely struggling for the first 2 months of the season. For him to have come back and to be able to put up the numbers he has, of course, a lot of he's been a big part of the Diamondbacks offense. So he has 28 home runs, 95 RBI this season. I think that's been great. But, again, guys like Corbin Carroll and Jake McCarthy contributing in a way where, they're manufacturing those runs a bit more and trying to do a little bit more to score, in maybe more than one way, I think would help this team in some of these closer games.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think it's going to be interesting to see offensively how the Diamondbacks handle this series, because this is also a team in the Rockies that I would argue has one of the most kind of spread out, talented defensive lineups, at least in the National League. They've got, a probable Gold Glove, center fielder in Brenton Doyle, Ryan McMahon over at third base, Ezekiel Tovar at shortstop. And also that's not discounting the fact that our corner outfield, Nolan Jones and Jordan Beck are incredible defensive outfielders. So you know that defensively, I mean, if you're putting the ball in play, there are guys out there on the field that can make plays. It's not like you're playing the Marlins where they're averaging, 2 errors per game, in the field. This is a team that you're going to have to string hits together consistently against if you want to be successful in that regard. And I think for, especially for the Rockies, kind of taking care of the routine plays. I mean, Brenton Doyle, I go back to him because I just saw this stat that came out. He robbed a grand slam yesterday in center field. Looked like the most routine grand slam robbery I've ever seen out of someone before, but he is tied for the second most defensive runs saved among center fielders since the start of last season. And he's also number one in, quote, good fielding plays at the center field position in 2024. So, I mean, this is a defense that I think people sometimes overlook in Colorado, that Colorado defensively is a hard place to kind of lock down because of the elevation, because of how big that outfield is. And the Rockies have an incredible defensive front, which the Diamondbacks do as well. But you know that you're going to have to work just a little bit harder offensively to get some of those balls to drop out in the outfield and to get some of those balls through the infield. Your offense just has to kind of be at it from the first inning all the way till the ninth, because you know that there's going to be a solid defense playing out there in the field to back them up.
Yeah, and that's the Diamondbacks calling card as well. Like, the way that they have won games consistently has been some great defense behind their starting pitching. This year's just been weird, though, for the Diamondbacks. Their run production, again, it makes you feel like this team can score at any time, at any point, any amount of runs. I mean, even in that loss in game 2 to the Brewers, they still put up 8 runs in a loss that was, I think, 15-8. So, I mean, their run production has been solid. It's going to be interesting to see, though, because like you said, this is a different Rockies team than they played a month ago. The Rockies still right there in the middle of the pack, as far as OPS as a team. The Diamondbacks, they've been doing some big things. They lead all of baseball right now with a 778 team OPS.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think one thing we've talked about so much this season is that if you would have told us that the Diamondbacks would be leading the Dodgers for the best offense in baseball, we probably would have thought you were crazy.
For a quarter of the price, too. Yeah.
Yeah. 784 RBI leads all of baseball. I mean, it's just crazy how the gap, again, 784 RBI. The Dodgers are second at 721. The Diamondbacks have 63 more RBI than the closest, team to them this season. And that's not something that we expected to see out of this team. Yeah, we did know that the additions would make them better, but it's like you just didn't really feel like, obviously, like Randall Grichuk, Gino, and Jock Peterson were going to make this the best, offensive team in baseball. The key, I think, is Torrey's ability to match up with the starting pitcher and have a solid lineup of, not necessarily backups, out there on any given night, but a solid starting pitching, matchup against both right-handed and left-handed pitchers.
Well, and you've needed it because this NL West, I think, people knew that the NL West was going to be good, but, it quickly became the best division in baseball by a landslide. I mean, you've got the Dodgers, who were expected to be kind of at the top of that with the payroll that they have and the players that they have. Shohei Ohtani having a historic season. But then the Padres mixed into the middle of that, you guys. And then you kind of expand that a little bit more and you look at the wild card with the Mets and the Braves. I mean, this is the most competitive I think I've seen an NL West in forever. This might be the most competitive NL West I've ever seen. I'm like, well, you have to be at the top of your game if you want to even compete. It's not even just the NL West, it's the National League in general, right? We were just talking about it this morning. When was the last time you looked at the the standings and thought we might not get 100-win team this season, right? There's a lot of parity when that's the case, right? But you're right. I mean, there was a point this season where the Diamondbacks and Padres had firm control of wild card spots, and it looked like the Giants could potentially be in the running for the final spot. Could you imagine how crazy it is for 4 teams from the National League West to make it into the playoffs? That would be nuts, right? So you're absolutely right about that. I think, honestly, too, going back to the offense, the flip side to that is we were taking victory laps about how good we thought this starting rotation was going to be.
we thought the Diamondbacks were going to flat out have the best starting rotation potentially in baseball when they added Jordan Montgomery,
Yeah.
and unfortunately it has very much gone the opposite direction, right? Where you've lost, at one point you lost Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, and Eduardo Rodriguez. And the only two guys from your normal, you had Brandon Pfaadt and Jordan Montgomery out there pitching out of your starting rotation. Jordan Montgomery was just flat out awful at times. And then you had Ryan Nelson step up and become this very good pitcher based on necessity for this team that, just delivered night in, night out. So, the starting rotation has been a bit of a mess for this team this year. And it's definitely been a weakness, but as we get closer to the postseason, should the Diamondbacks be able to make that, I think there's a way for them to really put out, their best starting pitchers in the playoffs and not necessarily have to go with some of those guys that haven't given them the consistency this season,
Yeah, well, and it speaks to how long baseball is, how long of a season it really is. I mean, you're right. Come, July, you were thinking, yeah, like even to say something like, should the Diamondbacks make it to the playoffs, is like, of course they're going to make it to the playoffs. Like, are you watching how they're playing right now? And now, after just a couple weeks of iffy baseball, you're like, okay, like we're only 2 games up here, in the wild card. Like we gotta be careful. A lot can change in the 4 series that we have remaining on our schedule, and so it speaks to the fragility and the competitiveness of the National League, but the fragility of the standings and where you're at right now, because it's a crazy time. I mean, it's chaos in the NL right now. So I want to keep talking about that here in a moment, but before we get into that, I got to share some love with our friends over at Coors Light because, look, the Rockies are playing at home this week. I said it, on Friday. It has never been a better time to go out to Coors Field. It's like 85 degrees, maybe a little bit less. It's perfect weather. It's been hot all summer. This is nice weather out in Denver. It was beautiful at the game yesterday. It's no better time to watch baseball in Colorado than right now. And if you're going to be out at Coors Field, you got to pair your time with some nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light. Head up to that rooftop bar anytime before first pitch. You get $3 Coors Light beers before first pitch. After the 7th inning, it's $4 Coors Light beers. It's an incredible deal, and it really is just a great combination anytime you're out watching baseball to get some Coors Light. But even if you're not at the baseball field, you're going camping maybe this weekend, or you're just out with friends, Coors Light is the best way to enjoy embracing that chill mindset, relax a little bit, crack open a nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado. Also, right now, we got to share some love with our friends over at Bet365, because at Bet365, we don't do ordinary, and it is an incredible time to be involved in the sports betting world, because look, you've got football back in line, NFL season, college football is back, MLB season is heating up. It is just a all-out beautiful time to be a sports fan, and Bet365 has you covered, because right now, new customers can choose between 2 offers when they open an account at Bet365 using code DNVR365. You sign up, deposit $10, choose between either a bet and get offer by placing a bet of $5 or more and getting a $200 return in bonus bets, or first bet safety net offer by placing up to $1,000. And if your qualifying bet loses, you receive a matched refund in bonus bets. So whatever the sport, whatever the bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And be sure to use code DNVR365 when you sign up, and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. So going back to this National League chaos that we were just talking about, I want to talk about some of these teams that are kind of getting down to the wire here with you guys, because the Dodgers are a team that obviously we're all focused on. They're at the top of the pack right now in the National League. But they've got some injuries, too, that are causing things to kind of getting a little shakeup going on the NL West side of things. Tyler Glasnow just went down with an injury. He is out for the season. That's a big blow to the Dodgers lineup. I mean, this is a situation where, I was checking out the NL West standings because I feel like it's changing every day. I mean, you guys are, 5 games back from the Dodgers. The Padres, 3.5 games back right now. But this is a situation where I think the Dodgers aren't guaranteed to win the NL West division. I think the Padres being only 3.5 games back. I mean, we all know how chaotic the end of the year can be. This is a situation where the Dodgers are going to make the playoffs, yes, but do we see there being concern for the Dodgers in the postseason because of the injuries that they've had this season? We have just talked about it with you guys in the Diamondbacks, but I feel like there are a lot of teams right now that are just so unknown of what we're going to get out of them, not only in the latter half of the season, but also in this postseason. The Dodgers are kind of at the top of my list there.
Yes, you're totally 100% accurate with that. I feel like the Dodgers are it's not a team you want to match up with, right? Like, you got to give credit where credit is due. All the top teams in the National League, they're all difficult. You don't really want to go through any of them. I think a lot of Diamondbacks fans, for the most part, have been wanting the D-backs to go through the same path that they went through last year, which is for them to end up in the final wild card spot, to match up with the Brewers, then to take on, the Dodgers in the next round, and then to take on the Phillies, essentially. And that's the path they go through, right? After playing this Brewers team, I don't know if the Diamondbacks want that smoke in the first round so much anymore, right? I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. They still have 4 more games against the Brewers this season, which I can't stand the way the scheduling works out. Like, this happened with the Cubs last year, where for some reason a National League team, the Diamondbacks, haven't played all year. Now we play 12 games against each other in 2 weeks or whatever, but they'll have a good chance to at least see this Brewers team up close plenty. And we'll get a chance to see if Diamondbacks fans want to, reverse their thinking on wanting to go through Milwaukee again this year, because this is a different Milwaukee team, right? So when it comes down to what the Dodgers and some of these more powerful teams are, I mean, there's a lot that could happen. I mean, we still debate whether the layoff in the playoffs is good or not. I don't think it is, because again, just like what we were talking about with guys coming back from injury, there's this weird thing about getting back into a groove. And despite the fact that this is an agonizingly long season and one of those games that really is just a marathon instead of a sprint, it does feel good to stay, in that baseball kind of mode rather than taking that time off. We've seen historically that hasn't necessarily worked for the teams at the top that get that break while the other teams are playing in the wild card round. So I don't know how things are going to stack up, but I do know that pitching is very important. And I mean, the Dodgers seem to be one of those teams that's their weakness when the playoffs come around. And I think that's the reason why that team can get there. They can win the division. They can get through a long season, especially when they have the offense that they have, right? But essentially it can get exposed in a playoff series. And I mean, the Diamondbacks did that to them last year. And I think there could be a number of teams that do that to the Dodgers again this year in the playoffs, right? I don't really feel like any team is dominant this season. I don't feel any team is unbeatable when it comes to the playoffs, and especially the way the playoffs are structured. All it takes is any team getting in at this point and staying hot at the right time, and that's right now all it could take to beat a team like the Dodgers.
Literally. And I mean, Clayton Kershaw is the poster child of bad pitching in the playoffs, so it's just like I always have that asterisk or that question mark by the Dodgers anytime they make it to the playoffs, which I love because we all hate the Dodgers here, so we're all on the same page with that. Yeah,
it's pressure, right? Like, again, it's the reason why this series between the Diamondbacks and the Rockies is dangerous for the Diamondbacks. All of the pressure right now is on the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time during this season where it felt like the reason guys that were on the main roster that were struggling was because the losses to personnel based in the lineup and in the starting rotation kind of put the pressure on those guys to be, you have to hold it down in their absence. And it seemed like the pressure was getting to this team early on. It was a little bit too much between, the success and the expectancy for them to be good again this year, to be better than they were last year, to make the playoffs again. It just seemed like it was a bit daunting, early for this team, but they did a good job of embracing it and handling it, over the stretch. It's just now that's where they're at. The Rockies team have nothing. They have nothing to lose when it comes to playing this Diamondbacks team. It's a matter of pride for the Rockies now. It's a matter of, we just want to beat you, and we just want We want to ruin the thing you're trying to do. And that just, it makes it easier for the pressure on this to be all on the Diamondbacks and not on the Rockies in any way.
Well, I will add, though, that I do think there's a little bit of pressure on some of the players on the Rockies because you've got you've got 13 rookies, or no, 12 rookies, 13 MLB debuts this season, a franchise record. You've got half of your lineup, pretty much each game is a bunch of rookies. I do think there's, beyond the pride, there is this pressure that the individuals are putting on themselves, of, especially in the bullpen, of like, we're trying to solidify ourselves as a big league player. And so you're trying to play the best that you possibly can. And, I look at, for example, and he actually just got sent down yesterday, Bradley Blaylock, who got traded from Milwaukee. He was one of our few trades that we made this year. He made his MLB debut officially, or MLB debut start officially with the Rockies. And he did it against the Padres. He went against the Yankees. And I can't remember if he pitched against you guys or if it was someone else, but it was like three of the best teams in baseball that were like his first three starts. And he was solid. He only made it 6 innings in each of those games, but he never gave up more than two runs. And I remember thinking to myself after that happened, like, that's huge, because you've got a guy who is brand new in the big leagues going up against the best teams in baseball. And if you can have good outings that against these teams, that's huge from a confidence standpoint for these young guys in the rest of their career. And so I think the Rockies team is going to play with a chip on their shoulder, even though they're not playing for a playoff spot. They're playing to solidify themselves as a big league player. And and that's huge. And I'm seeing that energy out of this team. And I talked to Antonio Senzatella yesterday about that. And he was talking about our bullpen, and he's like, it looks like every single one of these guys is like, give me the ball. Like, I want to pitch. And that's not something you normally see out of a team that's been eliminated at this point in the season. So I do think it's a little bit of a different vibe for the Rockies this year than what you would normally see against a team like, I don't know, the Marlins or the White Sox at this point in the year, where they're just like trying to finish the year. The Rockies are playing for something, even though it's more internal.
I think part of it, you're absolutely right, because when we started PHNX, right, we were covering the Diamondbacks at the tail end of one of the worst seasons in franchise history. And at that point, the question we were asking ourselves is, who is the core of this team? Who are you going to build around going forward? Who are you going to establish? Because there are, we say there are levels to this, right? There are levels to running an organization. There are steps, if you will. And that first step, before you do anything else, needs to be establishing a core for your team, whether those are guys that you have drafted and came up through your organization, or if it's somebody you got through some other means, trading for that individual or picking them up via free agency. But you need to establish who your core that you're going to build around is. And I mean, that's what Rockies players at this point are fighting to be a part of, right? You want to be a part of that core. You want to be a part of this team moving forward. And I mean, there are some very, very talented players on this team, right? So it's not to say like they don't have a core that they're establishing right now. It's just a matter of being smart enough to keep those guys, find other guys that are in that range, right? In that age range, not trading those guys away, not giving up on them, not trying to rebuild your organization again with more 22-year-old guys, like trying now with the great talented players that you had. The Diamondbacks started to figure that out, and that's what really allowed them to get to where they were at. The only thing that was crazy with this team is they freakishly skipped steps over the course of like one season, right? You're like, all right, well, you add some free agents, and then, and it's like they seem to kind of do that all in 1 year. They brought in some veteran guys in Evan Longoria. They had, of course, some very talented young players that we were like, okay, this is the core. You build around a Corbin Carroll, a Geraldo Perdomo, a Alec Thomas. These are the guys that are young. They're going to be here for a while. And then you can add, of course, that next level where you go out and you supplement that core with star power. And then you kind of push your chips in and go for a championship. It's like the Diamondbacks somehow figured out a way to do those 3 steps over the course of one season. And it was shocking, because as you watched this team, you were just happy that like, hey, we're going to maybe have a plus 500 record this season, and maybe maybe we're on pace to maybe even make the playoffs. And then they did. And you're like, hey, we're just happy to be here, right? Like, this is just, we're just happy to be here. We're going to play the Brewers. It's cool. Whatever happens, happens. But because we were so, I guess we were so, it was so early in that process that you didn't expect them to make it all the way to the World Series. And then, of course, that impacts the time frame on this team. Now they made it to the World Series, and now all of a sudden this season, which should have been maybe another season just building towards the playoffs and building towards, this team being a bit more successful than they were last year. Now in fans' minds and maybe even within the organization, it is like a must-win season suddenly, out of nowhere, right? So, like, I think that they have the talent to do so, but they still have to get there. And there is a lot of good teams in between, today and the end of the regular season for the Diamondbacks. We got less than 2 weeks left to go. So this is it. But if they do win against the Colorado Rockies today, they will have matched their win total for last season with, I believe, 12 games left to go. And that's a fairly impressive feat. And it shows that this organization is still moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about with players to build around, and I want to continue on to that topic though in just a moment. But real quick before we do, got to give some love to our friends at Chinook Seedery, because Chinook Seedery, they have the best seeds, sunflower seeds on the market, and I think we have some actually here. Yeah, we do. We've got some back here. They've got a bunch of really cool flavors that we have here with Chinook Seedery, but it's not just the flavors that are the best part of these seeds. It's the fact that they don't leave a really bad aftertaste in your mouth. If you've chewed sunflower seeds your whole life like I have, that like some of those, older seeds that I used to get when I was in high school and stuff, like they leave that chalky flavor in your mouth. They kind of rip up the inside of your gums and stuff. Not Chinook Seedery. Chinook Seedery, they're made with premium ingredients. It doesn't leave that salty burn. It doesn't leave that bad aftertaste. It's really made with the best ingredients, and it's got unique, one-of-a-kind flavors. They've got 8 different flavors. My favorite, personally, is the Hatch Green Chili Smokehouse Barbecue. Those are incredible. If you want to go a little bit sweeter, they've got cinnamon toast as well. Whatever you want, they've got it. Get a sampler pack to try all 8 flavors. They're the largest seeds on the market. Head over to ChinookSeedery.com using code Rockies for 20% off your order. They are the best seeds ever. Well, also, I wanted to remind folks that if you're like me, you're trying to get ahead on your money. I'm always trying to figure out my money, and Premier Member Credit Union is the best way that I've found to be able to kind of make the most out of your money. They are an incredible money management system. They're a financial institution based right here in Colorado. And really, they just kind of help you take control of whatever your goals are with your finances, whether you're trying to save money, whether you're trying to get into investing. I know a lot of, people, they're sending their kids off to college, or, maybe you're the one going to college and you're starting school again. Maybe you're trying to figure out, how do you get on top of your finances? Premier Members Credit Union has a lot of different options for you. Whatever your goals, they can help. PMCU is all about creating a better banking experience for their community. So why not see what they can do for you? Check out becomepremier.com to learn more. All right, Derek, so I want to talk a little bit about, we were talking about, ways you can build a franchise, because anytime I see a team like the Diamondbacks, like the Rangers from a year ago, even like the Royals this year, that kind of went from a nobody to a somebody overnight. You think of the get-rich-quick schemes. It makes Rockies fans excited, because you think, okay, well, maybe that can be us. There's this hope that next year, even though it doesn't feel like it's going to happen, and it probably on paper doesn't look like it's going to happen, maybe we can just pull a rabbit out of the hat and make something happen. And you were talking about how, you've got to have this core group of guys or individual players that you can kind of build a team around. I think for the Rockies, we're starting to see some of that come to life. I mentioned Brenton Doyle earlier, because Brenton Doyle, I think, from the month of July on, has burst onto the national scene. He won the NL Player of the Month in July. He's defensively showing that he is one of the best center fielders in all of baseball right now. His bat has come to life, which, we were not really expecting, given the way his bat started at the big league level. Ezekiel Tovar got that big contract, recently, and has been kind of solidified in the third base spot. Ryan McMahon, the Rockies came out saying, we're not trading Ryan McMahon at the trade deadline. He's going to be a core piece to this team. So we're starting to see some of these potential future all-star players getting their attention at the national level for the Rockies. I want to know what your experience was like with that, with the Diamondbacks. I mean, you guys have that core, and like you said, you kind of skipped some steps to get there. Do you still feel like that core is playing to the expectations that they had when you guys went to the World Series, when you guys were, playoff competitive teams, in these last couple of years? Do you still feel like that has kept the momentum and the energy going into this season as well, or has that shifted to a greater, all-encompassing team effort here in these last, few months?
Well, I think, the core of this team is probably its young players. And then you look at the additions like Gino Suarez, Jock Peterson, a couple of the other guys, right? But like, it really does feel like when you talk about the core, you're talking about the young players, and it didn't work out for everybody, right? Like, you had Alec Thomas, who really struggled this year. He also experienced a number of injuries, including one while he's been down in AAA. But you also had guys like Jake McCarthy, who really weren't a part of this Diamondbacks playoff run last year, but you could consider to be one of the core young players that this team decided not to move on from, decided not to trade, and decided to keep. And there was a period of time where Jake McCarthy looked like the best baseball player on the entire planet, right? So I think that they've gone through their struggles. There was, of course, there was a time where Corbin Carroll was a guy that some fans wanted to see sent down this very season, right? The guy who won the Rookie of the Year last year. So every baseball player struggles. It's about, I think, support and about not giving up on them, right? And that's something that Torey Lovullo is excellent on. Torey Lovullo supports his guys through and through, and it allows them to get through those struggles and become a better baseball player, right? Like, there is something to going through a slump and then getting out of that slump and knowing like you survived it. You lived to tell the tale, and here you are now as like Gino Suarez, for instance, one of the best baseball players in the league over the last 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, right? So sometimes you have to stick with guys through those struggles, and that's a big part of that core, right? Because you have those guys that go through ups and downs and are still developing at a major league level as a player. But I think, of course, for this team, an important part of it, is guys like Geraldo Perdomo becoming a leader, right? Like, Torey Lovullo has discussed time and time again about how Jerry P there is our on-field general, and the man goes out there and you see him supporting the starting pitching, you see him supporting his teammates, and there's a weird thing to it where like you might feel like it's a little hokey or cliche or even corny, but you find that Geraldo Perdomo and the support that he provides his teammates is very valuable to them. And the pitchers and other players will be the first one to tell you that, like, Geraldo Perdomo is, their manager out there when all the players are on the field.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's Rockies fans are hoping, Nolan Jones, who was a Rookie of the Year, potential last year. He's been in a huge slump this year, injured most of the season, had a kid. Players were saying, well, maybe that'll help him kind of get out of his head, now that he's had his baby, and he's kind of able to focus more on everything at the ballpark. And it's just like, so it shows the ups and downs that these players who have had incredible seasons go through. Jackson Holliday, another one of those guys who, started out sucking with the Orioles, then became the best hitter in baseball for like a month, and now is kind of fallen off again, and so I think it's riding the highs as much as you can and hoping that those line up with when your team needs you most. And look, for your guys' sake, you're playing meaningful baseball right now in September and going into October. You've got some pretty tough opponents coming up. The Rockies, I mean, you said it. The Rockies are a must-win series. If you're not sweeping the Rockies, you gotta at least win the series. But because then you've got the the Brewers, the Giants, and the Padres to finish out the year. I would even say the Giants are also a pretty tough team to beat, mixed in the middle of that. Like, that's a tough schedule to finish out a year on.
It very much is, and I mean, again, it's division opponents, right? So in general, you hate those guys, you want to beat them, and so that goes for the Rockies and the Giants, right? Like, you want to beat the Diamondbacks, you want to kind of spoil their season here at the end. And I mean, it's not even, even the easy opponents, quote unquote, aren't easy opponents for this team. it's a good test though. This Diamondbacks team, still is evolving and adapting even at this point, even with 2 weeks left in the season, which is crazy to say. Like, you don't really want to be evolving and adapting at this point, but in order for them to make a splash in the postseason, should they make it there, they're going to need to, figure out who they can rely on over this next, 12-day stretch, and who they're going to rely on when they make it, should they make it. Again, I'm not putting the cart before the horse into the playoffs, right? But I think that they do have one thing that's very valuable, and that's experience from last season, right? You have this young core of guys that normally would be fairly inexperienced at trying to make a playoff run and trying to do anything in the postseason. And, these guys just did it last year. So that's a valuable part of this team. And, especially making it down this stretch where every series, every game does feel like a playoff game.
Yeah. Well, you talked about making a splash. I got to mention before we wrap things up, I saw you guys had your first ever PHNX pool party, watch party. I need you to explain your experience on that, because I have never been to a Diamondbacks game, but that looked like probably the most incredible way you could have ever experienced a Diamondbacks game.
It absolutely was. I mean, first of all, with how long I've covered this team for 13 years. I've never been in the pool area besides like briefly in my clothes. So just to be in a bathing suit and without my shoes on, walking around a pool deck was weird enough at Chase Field, but it was incredible. It was incredible. It was literally one of the coolest things I've ever done. We were told that we were one of the biggest parties to get in the pool, because apparently it's a suite, right? So a lot of people don't actually get in the pool, even though they're in the pool area. They are understandably maybe a little embarrassed to be in a bathing suit in front of 40,000 people and on TV. You also probably have a lot of companies renting it out for some sort of like, team event. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to be around their coworkers in bathing suits and such. But
not you though. You're like, I'm all in.
We live a different life here at ALLCITY and at PHNX. You know that. So I will say this. In regards to my water experiences at a baseball park, I do have to give credit where credit is due. I had a much better experience at the Frisco Rough Riders lazy river in Texas, because they have a lazy river. And the lazy river, here's the only difference. The lazy river at Frisco Rough Riders goes right up to the edge of like the left field wall. So like when you're in the pool or you're in the lazy river, you could like belly right up and watch a baseball game. Whereas in the Chase Field pool, it's like back, a considerable distance from like the fence. And then there's people kind of standing in front of you, and you don't have the best view of like being in the pool and also watching the game. But it's a minor complaint.
Sure.
Being able to sit in a pool and eat a hot dog, even though my mom told me never to do those two things, and watch a baseball game is amazing. So we had a blast. So, and we're hoping to make that like an annual event for us. So that should be something that.
Oh, you guys got to let me know when you do that next time. I might have to make the trip out to do that with you guys, because I saw that and I was like, I don't know what the Rockies version of that is. Like, we don't have any cool pool to jump into. As someone was like, yeah, you could go have a party out by the fountains, but like no one's actually
camp in the fountain area.
I mean, it's a little more illegal than what you guys were doing there. So I don't know. Yeah. Don't know if that would go over too well with the Rockies PR staff. But that did seem like a pretty impressive thing. And I agree with you, man. Like, I was wondering if you guys had the opportunity to, like, if a ball made it close, because I know you guys have splash hits every once in a while. Did a ball come close to going into the pool at any point in that game?
Yeah. So our producer, Damon Farrell, is the biggest Geraldo Perdomo fan in the world. And Geraldo Perdomo hit like a ground rule double that bounced and it like came up into our area, but it didn't like make it all the way over the wall. So it went back in. It was like that close to being like a splashdown or a home run in our area. And I know Damon would have absolutely lost his mind if Geraldo Perdomo was the one that delivered that. But we got a Jake McCarthy baseball, which we shared with some friends that were here in town for the first time watching a Diamondbacks game from out of the country, and like things like that. It was a blast. It was really cool. And I think that much like what you guys have built in Denver, it's just cool to be able to hang out with a baseball community and see so many of our diehards and have so many of our people come out for a fun event like that.
Oh yeah, well, and especially when you've got a team like the Diamondbacks, that especially at that point when you guys went, I mean, you guys were on a hot streak of a lifetime, and it's like it's
Yes.
fun baseball, man. Like, and you know, for the Rockies, like we go and it's more about the atmosphere, and you know, and you enjoy hanging out with friends, and the game is kind of secondary just because the team isn't playing for as much.
Yeah.
But it's still fun, and it's still a great way to enjoy hanging out with friends. And you know, I think that's what's best about baseball, is that you get to kind of enjoy that community there. And DNVR, PHNX, ALLCITY does an incredible job of kind of connecting us with the fans and with the community here. And
I
you
have
know,
to,
both
I have to
incredible
speak.
communities.
I have to speak on your guys' behalf really fast, not to interrupt you, but I just have to say one of the things that changed for the Diamondbacks, and this is something that we both share, you know, in common, is our owner spending money,
Yeah.
right? And even though this year Ken Kendrick spending the money that he spent didn't go the way that we wanted it to, especially spending $25 million on Jordan Montgomery the way they did at the last minute. Like, he really opened up the checkbook this year, and they really made a push to make whatever additions they felt necessary to get this team back to the World Series again this year. And that was different and refreshing, right? But the thing about that is Chase Field, a lot of days, is a fairly empty ballpark. So just speaking on Colorado Rockies fans' behalf, you have a great fan base that comes out, and yes, maybe they do come out just because the atmosphere is great, because the vibes are outstanding, because it's a great place to be, but you still have people coming out, buying tickets, and going to those baseball games, and every shot I see of Coors Field is filled with fans.
Yeah.
That is something that deserves better, you know, from the ownership. That is something that deserves money to be spent on this team. And I understand, like, you go through your periods of time where you are trying to establish that core, but I think we both can agree that the Rockies have enough exciting young players that there's no reason to not open up the checkbook again. I know Chris Bryant didn't work out in the way that I'm sure anybody there in Colorado hoped it would, right? Like, that's, but it's like, again, Jordan Montgomery didn't work out for us. And the one thing I pray is that is not now the thing that Ken Kendrick remembers and says, I'm never doing that again. Because yeah, those things aren't going to work out in baseball, but it shouldn't prevent you from going out there and, I guess, honoring the fact that that baseball stadium is as filled as it is at times by spending the money on the team and trying to reinvest back in the team. And I mean, Ken Kendrick says he reinvests every dime that they make back into the team, which a lot of people probably have a hard time believing. However, sometimes when you look at Chase Field on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, there's less than 10,000 people in the stands, and you're really sitting there going, maybe they are reinvesting everything they get because they're not getting that much at times. Like, that ballpark is filled on the weekends and for big series and for giveaway days. But outside of that, it's hard to find a day where Chase Field is filled with people in the way that Coors is filled on any given night. So I think you guys deserve better when it comes to the amount of money that team is making off of the fan base that has been fairly damn loyal to that team.
Oh yeah, you're speaking my language, man. We averaged 40,000 people this weekend at Coors Field almost every game. So yeah, it is a fun place to be. But
for a team that hasn't been in it since April, like that's incredible. Like, what I would give to have Diamondbacks fans like come out like that. I'm not even joking. Like, that's an amazing thing to consider.
It is. I will say there was a lot of blue at the stadium this past weekend. Cubs fans show out, but I'll take it, man. Like, give me the energy in the ballpark. It works either way. You know,
they still pay money. They still pay American dollars to come, and like, that's a problem the Diamondbacks have. They even leaned into it with having a versus hot dog that is for the visiting fans. Like, it'll be like something about their region. And it drove Diamondbacks fans nuts that they were catering to the visiting fans that much. It's like, why not? You guys also get to eat the hot dog too. They're not saying it's just for visiting fans, but they are trying to do something to make sure that this ballpark is as full as
energy is energy. Energy is energy. That's the way it goes, you know. Got to have a good turnout. But look, man, I'd love to talk more about this, but we're running out of time. I have had a blast chatting ball with you. I'm hoping this is a good series, dude. This is going to be a lot of fun. I know there's a lot of pressure for you guys, but it should be a really, really fun series to have a hold of, and so hopefully we get some good games on our hand. But let the people know where they can find you on social media. What's your tags?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at cap_caveman with a K. And of course, we are at PHNX_DBacks for the beat account.
Sweet. I am Christian Saez on Twitter at CJJ Saez, or you can follow us at DNVR_Rockies. Shout out to our awesome producer, Alyssa. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. This has been the DNVR Rockies podcast brought to you by Bet365. We're going to see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. Have a good one, everyone.
We all silly like the mayor.